Hi everyone, this is Brian Hayes, and welcome to the 6th video in our series on classic guitar riffs. Today we look at Born on the Bayou by Creedence Clearwater Revival. This song was the B-side to the famous Proud Mary 45 RPM single release in 1969. Proud Mary, of course, went on to catapult Creedence to the top of the charts and really established their career as one of the leading bands and eventually the #1 band in the world in the field of rock and roll for a period. Born on the Bayou is a good example of what became known as swamp rock. And a big part of that sound is the use by John Fogerty of an effect called Tremolo. Now, back in the 1960s, just about all of the major brand of guitar amplifiers, along with reverb, had another built-in amplifier effect called tremolo. Now, tremolo is a fluctuation in the volume of the sound coming out of an amplifier. It's not a fluctuation in the pitch of the notes being amplified. That effect is a vibrato effect, and if you're interested in vibrato, you'll see with my wind instruments there's many videos that I've loaded about how to add vibrato to, for example, flute, clarinet or saxophone. And vibrato is definitely that bending of the pitch. However, tremolo is simply a reduction in a pulsing sort of fashion in the volume of the note being played. Now, for today's tutorial, I'm actually going to be using the Boss TR2 Tremolo effects pedal. You can see this pedal has 3 knobs on it. A rate knob, which basically says how fast or slow do you want that pulsing effect to be. A depth knob, and that controls how much of the effect do you want compared to the original sound of the guitar, in this case being plugged into the pedal. And the smaller knob, which is labelled wave, and that controls how sharp or soft you want that change in the volume to occur. Do you want it to be an absolute drop over the edge of a cliff sort of change in the volume, or do you want it to be more of a legato, smooth sort of volume change? So this pedal, in combination with my electric guitar, will sort of recreate the sound that John Fogerty used on the original recording, but just remember, at that time, the distortion you hear and the tremolo effect that you hear was all created by the amplifier. The distortion was simply overblowing the amplifier, playing louder into the amp than the amp could handle. Nowadays, we have a whole range of studio and hardware signal processors that can recreate those sounds, but what you'll hear on Born on the Bayou is literally a very loud guitar being played through an amplifier that's sort of cracking up by the volume that it's expected to produce. And the pulsing in the sound is actually inbuilt in the amplifier, the tremolo effect. As always, I'm going to take you through the individual notes of the riff, firstly on my acoustic guitar, just so we haven't got the distraction of the electric guitar's effects in the background. We can just talk through the notes and the fret positions and the fingers easier if we're just dealing with the acoustic guitar. I will, however, at the end of the tutorial play the riff on one of my electric guitars, and I'll use the distortion effect and the tremolo effect added to the electric guitar sound. And I'll also double track a bass guitar and put on some drums there just to create the sort of sound, the original sound of the Creedence song. Now, I'm also going to play this riff slightly differently than the original recording, just in so much as I'm going to repeat the slide effect that John uses to start this song with. I'm going to repeat that within the riff, mainly because if you're playing this riff on your own and someone's watching and listening to you play it, it'll sound a little more interesting with that repetition of the initial slide into the riff. Now finally, the original recording starts with a fantastic example of electric guitar amp feedback, a feedback loop. And all that happens there is John just aimed his electric guitar pickups directly at high volume into the guitar amp and left the open E string ring on And the sound you hear on the recording is just that fantastic electric guitar high power feedback loop being generated. We won't be doing that on this clip, but just be aware that the sound that you do hear on the start of the original recording is electric guitar feedback, the pickups of an electric guitar being faced directly into the speakers of an electric guitar amplifier at high volume. This riff is based on the notes in an E7th chord, but we're not going to play the E7th down here on the first 3 frets of the guitar as you might commonly play it. We're actually going to use the C7th shape and slide that up here to the 7th fret of the guitar. That is where my 3rd finger, instead of playing C on the A string, is now playing E on the A string on the 7th fret. And then we form the same finger shape as the common C7th chord, but we're now playing an E7th chord. And the entire riff is based around that shape. The riff only uses notes from the E7th chord and only notes from that particular chord shape on the guitar. Let me just play the riff for you and then we'll walk our way through the individual notes. Now, as I said, that's slightly different to the original recording, but I find that playing it that way, particularly if you're on your own and someone says, oh, can you play me something on the guitar? If you play the start to Born on the Bayou in that way, where we're repeating that initial slide and we're also playing the notes just a little bit, we give ourselves a bit of a breathing space at the end of that. If you listen to the original recording, the notes are more continuous and they all stay here and there's only the initial slide. So that's the version we're going to learn today, and what you may have picked up is it's exactly the same thing 4 times in a row. So we start, the easiest way to do this is to actually form the C7th chord shape up here on the guitar neck. So C, E, B flat and C, the standard C7th shape. Now we're only playing the strings, the inside strings, 5, 4, 3 and 2. We're not hitting either of the 2 outside E strings throughout this riff. So what we're doing is we're picking the note C and then instantly holding the shape and sliding that up to where it's E7th. So the initial effect you'll hear is this. It's the note C being slid up, and actually do let it slide, don't block the string out. We're not looking for a C to an E, we're actually looking for like a glissando, a slide from C on the 3rd fret of the A string to E, which is on the 7th fret of the A string. But the easiest way I find to do it is to hold the chord shape, because we're going to end up having to play that chord shape. So even for the slide, hold the C7th chord shape, but you're only hitting the 5th string. Okay, now once we're down there, we've hit that note E, we go like this. So it's the 5th string, then we play the G sharp, then the E, and then the D. Now if you look closely at my right hand, because my left hand isn't going to change throughout this riff, once my left hand has slid up to the 7th fret, absolutely nothing happens here. I just hold the chord shape and all of the action is down here on my picking hand, on the right hand. So I'm going to do that again slowly and just zoom in if need be on my right hand picking to just see the strings I'm playing. And that's the riff. I really hope that's been of interest and help to you. As always, keep in touch via my website. That's www.brianhayes.biz, B-I-Z, Z for Zorro. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's a great way to keep up to date with the many videos that I upload featuring the instruments that I play and teach. And drop me an email if you have any fundamental questions about music tuition. I'm going to end now with the electric guitar version of Born on the Bayou. I'll run the Gibson ES345 here through the Boss Tremolo effects pedal, also a distortion effect and some reverb, and I'll double track the Fender bass and add a drum kit to recreate that famous Creedence sound. Bye for now.
Thank you.